And we are live.
Hello.
Hello, Megan. Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you
Thank
today?
you. I am doing very well. It is 7:30 at night here in Vienna. It's been a very rainy day, but have had a good good day of writing and getting things out. And I just took a walk in the drizzle so I could get some exercise
Mm,
in. It's been a good
excellent.
day.
Yeah. So before we start, I'd love to know about your move to Vienna because I know that's quite a big deal. So say something about that and then we'll dive in and I'll introduce you.
Right. Well, I can say a lot about this. I was not originally planning to be in Vienna. I was actually planning to be in Amsterdam. But I have been wanting to move over to Europe for a long time. I'm from the States, from New York, and Amsterdam and Netherlands just didn't work out. And my sister, who also lives in Europe, gave me some suggestions of other cities to, she's like, why don't you try out some cities for a little bit? Maybe you'll fall in love with one or you'll make your way over. And I came to Vienna and I had no idea, no expectations. I had never been here before, never been to Austria. And I very quickly just fell in love with the city. It's
Mm,
beautiful. There's a Things just work really seamlessly here. I found the people very, open, and I've met a lot of wonderful people, both local as well as through expat communities. So it's just been a nice change of pace, and I'm very happy to be here.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here in this space
Well, thank you.
for Stories of Creative Courage. We met on Substack
Yeah.
and kind of connected, I think, through comments first of all, and then met up and had a Zoom, and it became clear that there was a lot to talk about, so much more than we had time for. So I am excited to continue having the conversation about creativity in this space as well. One of the reasons I started this conversation series is to really talk to different people and find out about what creativity means to them
Mm.
and what gets in the way, and how we can harness our courage in our creative expression, however that manifests. And I've had people from all different backgrounds and with different forms, and people who say they are an artistic practitioner and others who maybe aren't. And so everyone's definition of creativity is different.
Mhm.
But I think what really binds everyone together, like there's a common thread, which is that we have to face into often our discomfort in order to be creative, to express ourselves, to be visible as we are
Yes.
here in this space as well. So I'm very grateful to you for being here. So first of all, I will introduce you, Megan, and then we can go on to talk about the many things we want to talk about.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
Maghan Haggerty is a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach and also a certified Sparketype advisor.
Hmm.
I'm going to pause there because I would love to know in a moment what those things are. So, people who maybe don't know about those practices, those frameworks, it would be great to have a very brief
Hmm.
summary, maybe. But mainly, she has a gift for seeing people's individuality and connecting with their hearts, and also helping them develop their unique strengths. And I think that probably connects to your training in
Yes.
Clifton Strengths and in Sparketype. So, can you tell us very briefly about those things and what they do and how you use them in your work?
Sure. So many people might have heard of Gallup Clifton Strengths as StrengthsFinder. There is a very popular book, StrengthsFinder 2.0. A lot of organizations use this tool, and basically, it's an assessment that um, assesses how you or identifies how you naturally think, feel, and behave. So it's a little bit of a misnomer, actually, to call it StrengthsFinder or Clifton Strengths, because what it actually is identifying is your natural talents that with investment can be turned into strengths.
Mm,
So there are 34 strengths. Everyone has them in some order. And they really just help you identify how you interact with the world. And so I like to use that tool to help people find the best of themselves and put that to work in whatever way, whatever, if it's a creative endeavor, a professional endeavor, a business endeavor, or just fun life and how to use that.
mm,
Sparketypes is very related in that it's created by Jonathan Fields, who I work with, and it helps identify the impulse for work that makes you come alive. So I know you talk a lot about essence, Rachel, and I was thinking about this today that
Mm,
it's probably like a very, very close. I think essence is made up of a lot of things, but I think what Sparketypes really gets to is like the that impulse for why you do the things that you do. Like we talk about work, and a lot of people think immediately of their paid work, but work is a very broad category. Work can be how you approach learning. Work can be how you approach creative projects. Work can be how you approach relationships. So there are 10 Sparketypes, and when you take your assessment, you get your first two, so the strongest, and then you
mm,
also get your anti. And by knowing those things, it can really help you identify what lights you up and maybe what drains you, and
mm,
that can help you lead you to how you can apply that in all manner of your work.
mm. Yeah, I'm so glad you talked about those two things, and I will do some show notes and I'll put links to those things in the notes so people can find them. I have found Sparketypes so useful and really helpful in really allowing me to embrace who I am. So, for ages I was like, no, I'm a maker because I write things. And actually when I took the test, which was several years ago, it's like, oh no, my primary type is an advisor. And slowly I've over years I've become a coach, and it's really in stepping into that role of like advising, like holding space for people, really facilitating that inner wisdom in other people. It's like, oh, that is my primary way of showing up in the world. That's what lights me up, so therefore I can work with others to hopefully light them up as well. So I love it as a framework. I think it's so fun and really helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving us that summary.
Yeah.
It's really, really great.
One
Mm,
thing on that, because you mentioned the maker. So there are 10 Sparketypes, and the maker is one of them. And the impulse for the maker is to make, to create, to bring things
mm,
forth. And I think there is a misnomer there in terms of people, if they don't see maker in that top two, or maybe they see it as like their very bottom, they go, oh, yep, I'm not creative because I'm not a maker. But creativity, in my view, extends to in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't always come from that specific impulse of the maker. So whatever assessment you take or have taken, I say you are creative in your own unique way. It's just a matter of unlocking it.
exactly. And creativity shows up differently. This is what I love about this stuff, because it's, a maker might be an artist or a musician or a writer, but actually we make stuff. So, for me and I imagine for you, like creating an experience for people is also a way of making and
Yeah.
showing up and expressing creativity. And it's taken me a long time to really acknowledge that. And I think this kind of segues into talking about your experience, because
Hmm.
I think you've had that experience, Megan, haven't you, of like assuming creativity was a certain way for so many years and then like realizing it's not. So tell us about your journey into creativity and with creative expression. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So I worked in advertising and marketing for almost 20 years. So if you're familiar with the advertising setup, there are different departments. And I was in the account management department. So, like the suits, I was the person that
Hmm.
managed, what the clients needed, the billing, all of that really fun stuff. But there were other departments, right? Like, so there was a strategy department. So I have challenges with the word, the label of strategic as well. And there was the creative department. There were people whose job titles were creative officer, creative director, art director, copywriter. So I think I had it in my head that because I didn't fit into that box, I wasn't creative. And it took a long time to realize that creativity comes in many different forms. And it could come in what we think of in the traditional art forms: writing, painting, drawing, design, cooking, you know, many different ways. But I think creativity can come in how you can be creative in your relationships and how you approach
Mm,
your relationships. You can be creative in, I mean, if you've ever seen somebody create a masterful spreadsheet that just takes a whole lot of chaotic numbers and data and make it make sense, to me, that's incredibly creative. So I think it just made me realize that I just needed to find my way of creativity. And yes, I write, and I would like to write more or publish more rather. But I think my creativity really stems from, and I'll point back to my Clifton strengths. One of my top strengths is connectedness, and somebody with
Mm,
high connectedness sees the connections between things. So one of the things I've always done, and I never just had the words for it, was take a lot of different ideas. I'm also a high learner. I'm maven from a Sparketype perspective. So taking a lot of information and kind of bringing it together in my own way and then sharing it out with others so others can kind of grasp it. I use a lot of metaphors and analogies in my coaching work. So to me that's kind of my form of creativity is how do I help people understand, kind of this mishmash or connect these connections that I'm seeing and share them with others.
I love that. And I know that your Substack is called Dots Connect.
Yeah.
So perfect. It's like, that's it seems like that's your mission to connect things, to connect people. It doesn't surprise me that you've got a high level of connectedness on your Clifton strengths because I feel that in your presence. It's like you're someone who is really curious and wants to connect and is very open and to receiving connection and to kind of being in connection. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, and for me, you've just pointed to what is really amazing about creativity, which is creating something, a new format or a new thing or a new space from things that are already existing. So it's like seeing patterns and then putting them together in a way that nobody has done before or like a new way. And I think there's something very evolutionary about that. As human beings, I think, well, my view is that we're kind of constantly pushing into new areas of experience and new territory. And I feel like in that sense, we're all creative because, if you're open to that, like living a
Hmm.
life is a creative way of being, So this idea of like connecting things and putting them into a new format or whatever is, yeah, that really resonates for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that kind of bringing things together and kind of one of the things underneath the Sparketype work that we train the certified Sparketype advisors goes beyond just the Sparketypes themselves, but a myriad of other preferences and orientations. And one of them is the creative orientation. So
Mm,
thinking about it as a spectrum of there are people whose creative orientation is more blank page and they have all of a sudden a novel appears. Like they make something of nothing they bring forth. I personally am not a fan of the blank page or the blank canvas or the blank anything. I have more of the creative orientation of expanding on things or connecting things or taking what
mm,
is and making something new. So it's
mm,
still both are forms of creativity. I think we tend to think only of creativity as that like bringing something forth that didn't exist from, that came from nothing, where
yeah.
really creativity can come in so many other ways.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That kind of explains to me. Maybe I have creative orientation too, because I also this fear of the blank page. I'd far rather work with something that's there already and to reformat it, reformulate it, rather than, do that thing of, yeah, first drafts I always struggle with. I have to really work against my resistance in order to put
I
stuff
think
on the
everyone
page.
does. I think
Yeah.
everyone does.
Yeah, but I think that's true, I think. But I think some people are more attuned to, or they feel more comfortable with that kind of splurge,
Yeah.
and the kind of, there's the kind of freedom in that. There's a kind of, oh, I'm just going to get everything out and put it on the page or whatever. And some people like me are more, well, I'm happier if I have something to work with, like you are too. And both are equally, forms of creativity.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess I'd love to know from you, like, what, we're talking about resistance, we're talking about the fear of the blank page. Like, what for you, maybe some of the things that for you get in the way of creativity. So for you personally, but also maybe for, the clients that you work with, the people that you support as well. Like, what comes up when I say, what gets in the way?
Oh, the little gremlins in my head.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I think it's, the tending to kind of like make things bigger, right? Then,
Mm,
when I'm feeling the most in flow and the most creative, I'm not thinking about external. I'm just kind of allowing it to flow through me. As soon as I put on the lens of I have to have this like perfectly crafted blog post, or I have to have, create this, beautiful worksheet, I get blocked. So I think a
Mm.
lot of times it's thinking making it bigger than it needs to be and just allowing it to come up and iterate on. I think the other thing too is, and I think this is true for writing definitely, but I think for all forms of creativity, which is especially when we feel the need to share it with the world, especially when we're, as business owners, and we're like, we need to let people know what we do so that they know to come to us. So it becomes, again, I need to let everybody know, or I need to make it palatable for everyone. And
Mm.
I think when you create, whether it's for sales or anything else, if you're thinking of just one person, that could be you, or that could be a specific person that you think might benefit from what you have to say. It always resonates more when it's written to just a singular person rather than trying to write it to, the masses. So I think when I forget that, that definitely gets in my way.
Yeah. It's back to that thing of connecting, isn't it? If you're connecting with even if it's an imaginary person or a specific person
Mhm.
writing to somebody, it's that yeah, that direct connection as opposed to like this mass of people and where do you begin to connect? The connection is, I suppose it's different, that you're kind of really homing in on one particular person, thinking about their energy as well. I think it was Virginia Woolf, the British novelist, who talked about the reader sort of warm and breathing on the other side of the page. And I really like that idea of there being somebody there, kind of warm and receptive, to what we're going to express. And this comes up a lot, I think, in these conversations as well. This loop of expressing what's on the inside and then taking it out, and then there's a kind of loop, this feedback loop of like giving and receiving, of
Yeah.
expressing from the inside out, and then seeing what comes back. And I think that's, for me, that's like the epitome of connection,
Yeah,
really.
it comes
Yeah.
more naturally, I feel like, when I'm in a coaching session or in a conversation like this, and I'm just having a conversation with another living, breathing, warm
Yeah.
human on the other side. And when I forget that, I think that's when it breaks up. And
Mm,
connectedness, the theme in Clifton Strengths, is actually part of the relationship building um, domain. So it's very connected to like a relationship of how I connect with other people. Even when I'm
mm,
connecting ideas, it's for that kind of part of building relationships or supporting relationships that I have.
mm. It sounds like for you, what gets in the way is making it too big, but also kind of yeah, losing sight of that connection.
Yes.
The kind of the loop becomes broken somewhere, so you lose sight of that, and then that gets in the way. It sounds like, yeah, yeah, amazing. What about the people that you work with? Like, what do you see in others that gets in the way of creativity?
I mean, I think I work with a lot of people who would consider themselves creative in the traditional sense, and I also work with people who are creative just in whatever they do. And I think it's similar. It's when I see my role as a coach is kind of holding up a mirror to help people
Mm,
see what they can't see.
mm,
Um, there's a American, but I think it's global phrase that it's plain as the nose on your face. But if you think about it, you can't see your own nose unless you're looking in a mirror. So sometimes what is so clear and obvious to somebody else, you're just too close to. And I think a lot of times that's the job of a coach, is helping people kind of recognize what you can sense that they're just not seeing because they're blind to it because it's too
mm.
close. So I think a lot of times it's just recognizing where that spark, where that creativity is coming in, allowing them to recognize it in themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. Um, I was hosting one of my kind of group coaching sessions last night, and this came up, this kind of sense of like we can't see our own blind spots, and we so need each other,
Yeah.
whether it's working with a coach or if it's a friend or if you're in a group. This sense of we can't do this stuff alone. We can't kind of tackle what gets in the way, just by toughing it out or just assuming we'll find the answers, that actually there's something about the mirroring that you're talking about that is really important. And also that connects us, right? So, we are bound to each other almost in a way in that
Yeah.
space. And I think probably you're coming at coaching in the same way that I do, which is always this kind of creating the space, reflecting back, and then seeing what happens as well, which is just fantastic. And then the coaching space itself becomes the creative canvas, right? That's what I love about coaching. So it becomes this kind of this space in which we can play, we can connect.
You're co-creating, like,
Exactly,
together.
co-creating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think again back to this thing about coaching and holding space is also creatively, like, inherently creative, I think, because we're kind of in this improvisational space as well, I think, which is just amazing. And I know for me, like, when the moment I realized that just to let go and just let it be, be in the space of connection and be in that co-creator space, I could just let go and forget about, oh, I should be asking this question, or perhaps I phrased that question wrong. All the things that we're taught, in coaching training, you have to do it this way and you must
Right.
ask powerful questions. And, it's like, no, actually, it's just about showing up and being in presence with somebody and, having that warmth and openness and receptivity and holding up the mirror, you
Yeah.
know.
I train the incoming certified Sparketype advisors, and I always say, like, what I have learned is prepare and then be prepared to throw everything that you have prepared out the window once you get
Mm,
into the room. And it's like you said, it's a creative dance in because
yes.
in order to really help someone, you have to be really listening to what's being said. And that might not be on the agenda that you had, crafted. I think preparing helps you be able to kind of feel prepared, but so
Mhm.
long as you don't keep it as a script and really kind of ask the questions that feel right in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That metaphor of a dance is really, I love that, because there's a sort of fluidity of movement that
Mhm.
happens there. We go back, we go forward, we sort
Yeah,
of move and shift, and yeah, that describes
we're
yeah,
improvers.
exactly, exactly. No, I realize that it's like, and it's taken me a long time. I'm someone who so used to hold to like structures and systems, and I guess probably what was underneath all of that was fear, of
Mhm.
being judged or not being good enough. And so I would kind of rigidly stick to a plan and a structure. Even in my creative writing work, I realized that, a novel that I wrote, it was so kind of tightly held and rigid in a certain way because I wasn't allowing for that kind of flowing through to happen. And yeah, it's taken me a long time to relax and to be able to trust and have enough of a structure that I feel that there's a framework there that protects us, that it's a sort of it's a safe container, and at the same time, there's lots of room for maneuver and change. And the thing about co-creation is that improvisational response to what comes up. I say something, you mirror it back, and then
Yeah,
and then we open and open and open from there. And we never know where we're going, and it's always
yeah,
a beautiful adventure.
yeah. And I think
uh,
that it takes a long time for anyone to kind of get comfortable and kind of moving into that flow
mm,
because I mean, I know you spent a lot more years in school than I did, but I think school really teaches us to, it has to be in a certain way and it's,
yeah.
memorization. And I think it's even a practice to, allow your creativity, allow that flow to come,
Mm,
just to allow it to not be the right, have the exact right thing.
yes.
Um,
Yes, being prepared to fail
yeah,
in inverted commas, because that's important. That actually, yeah, that there isn't any failure actually if you're open to the outcome. Like being prepared to kind of go with it. And I mean, I was speaking to quite a few creatives today that I'm mentoring, and I was talking about just being open to the experimentation and being open to the failure. And there is no failure if we can reflect on the process and learn from it and the insights that we take. That's the success, actually, regardless of the outcome, the process.
yeah.
So, yeah. Um, so practices for flow. I'm curious whether you have them, whether, yeah, how do you get into flow? Like, let's ask you that. Yeah. How do you get into flow?
So I think it's really important, and this is something that I also often do with my clients, is to have that thing that you can't not do as part of
Mm,
your life, whether it's your day-to-day routine or at least once a week. And I know the world is crazy and we all have a million things going on. So a lot of times those things that are just for us, those things that we need to do for us get put to the bottom of the list because we're taking care of everything else. So I think it's important even during those very chaotic times, we find like the bare minimum of what that like figure out what that activity is and find the bare minimum of time that we can give to it, just so that we're keeping our finger on the pulse of that
mm,
creative thing. So for me, I know there are a few things. Like I know that if I am not allowing, myself to take in information and just allow my brain to flow and connect the ideas. So for me, a lot of times that's walking in the park, listening to an audiobook or a podcast, and just having some ability to just kind of let my thoughts free flow.
mm,
For some people, it's writing and writing for them, not writing for the job, not writing for, something, but, maybe it's poetry. I have a wonderful friend who just came out with a whole book of haiku because
mm,
he needed this creative practice and he started just writing a haiku every day. And all of a sudden he got to 1,000 haikus over the course of a little over a year and was like, oh, I wanna do something with this. So it's just finding that one thing, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, I think is really important, especially in those high pressure, high stress times when it feels like we don't have enough time for that thing, because
mm,
it's like that's the thing that's the most important, because I think you can also use the word expansion for the word creativity, because I think that's what creativity does. It
mm,
expands. And so even if you're only able to get just that little touch of something, it can actually create some space and open up for other things in your life.
mm. Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I guess it's kind of coming back to that thing of spark, what lights you up, find the thing that you really love. And,
Mhm.
so there's a lot of stuff around like, you should meditate, you should, write morning pages, you should. And it's like, no, actually, maybe my 5 minutes practice is like making a cup of tea in the morning and staring
Yeah.
into space, and I've done that since I was a young adult, I've always needed that time and space. And for me, okay, it's not meditation as such, but it feels like it is. And it is a regular practice that happens every day,
Yeah.
and
I had a client
yeah.
who a writer and does a lot of creative things, and she also does embroidery, these beautiful designs. But one
Mm,
of the things she realized that she needed to do was just like that, almost like meditative stitching. So she would keep
mm,
a bin of things that needed mending near her desk, so that like whenever she was kind of needing that space, she would pick something up and just start, mending,
mm,
simple stitches, nothing,
mm,
fancy. So it really can be anything. I love the idea of just that, like taking that time to make that beautiful cup of tea and enjoy it.
exactly. Yeah. So there was something you said earlier about listening,
Mhm.
and I'm very curious how you see the relationship between like creativity and the act of listening.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's so, like I explained how I often like to kind of take a walk with, podcast or a book in my ears. And so often I need to actually stop listening because something that's happened has sparked other things. And I don't want to like not listen to the rest, but I just need a moment to pause to
Mm,
collect what's connected to me. So I think there is, for me, listening is so much a part of my creative process because I'm taking in like it could be from a book, but it also could be from an overheard conversation. Like there's times
Mm.
where I've like heard somebody say just a phrase and I've had to like take out my notes to like write it down. Um, it's just capturing those pieces and somehow knowing that they'll all connect into something at some point, or they won't, but it's just part of that process of practice, my creative practice, I guess.
Yeah, like gathering. It's a kind of
Yes.
gathering in of materials. So again, it's this piece of like connecting things together, gathering material. Um, and also, I hear in that like listening to yourself as well, like
Mm,
that impulse that says, right, no, stop. I'm listening to a podcast, but something's happening. There's a kind of listening that happens there, this sort of impulse, and reacting to that.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's part of for me that very much comes into that kind of territory of like think, I sometimes talk about it as like creating from the inside out. So it's that sort of
Mm,
if I can connect with myself first and foremost,
yes.
that requires deep listening and actually taking time to stop and taking time to have a cup of tea in the morning and listen to what's going on the inside, what's really going on there. That has to come first. And last week I had a conversation with someone else in this space, and we had exactly this conversation of like being attuned to the self, listening to the self really deeply, and then that comes first, and then from there we can create and
Yeah.
express. Um,
So
so
important to center yourself, like
yeah.
recognizing that we're allowed to be the lead character in our own life.
Mm.
Um, I think I know a lot of the people that I work with myself, and I think it's, a lot of women have this where it's we put everyone else and we kind of leave ourselves, to the wayside. So that's why I always say like that little thing that's just for you, that's the thing that you prioritize and make time for versus like finding the minutes at the end of the day when you're bone
Mm,
tired to do it.
mm, mhm,
Because it's a reminder to center yourself in the story and therefore center yourself so that you can kind of allow that creativity to come forth.
yeah, I love that. I think Julia Cameron kind of refers to it as filling the well. Have you heard that phrase?
I am in week 5 of The Artist's Way right
Oh, well,
now.
there you go. And how's that going for you? How are you finding it?
I so I had this is probably my 3rd or 4th time trying the Artist's Way. For
Yeah.
anyone not familiar, it's like a book that goes over a 12-week period. And I know you mentioned even in your post today, I think you mentioned your not so fondness for morning pages, which is that like every morning coming and writing 3 handwritten pages and just I call it getting the gunk out of your brain.
Yeah.
So I have found them. I've tried it before. I've kind of have not found them helpful in the past, but this time around they're helping.
Hmm.
The last few times I've tried this, I think I made it to week 2 maybe. So
Yeah.
the fact that I'm in week 5, I'm like, okay, I'm giving myself credit. Each week builds on one another. It has its own theme. Last week, week 4 is kind of the dreaded, reading deprivation or media deprivation week. And I tried. I didn't really succeed so much. When Julia wrote it, it was over 30 years ago. So social media didn't exist. Substack didn't exist. Instagram
Mm.
didn't exist. I removed Instagram from my phone. So I spent no time on Instagram last week. But I was having a bit of a stressful week. So I did keep Substack. And so I found whenever I needed that, dopamine, I would go into Substack. But Substack has such a wonderful community. So I was like, okay, I'm giving
Absolutely.
myself this. But
Yeah.
I have found that like even that little act of just taking that away did help me. The purpose of it is to hear your own voice and stop
Mm.
so not stop taking other people's voices in, but even just kind of all of the stuff that's on social media and not having that in my brain. This week I'm feeling just much more creatively energized and I've like had ideas flowing out. So I am enjoying it. I'm going to see how if I can make it the full 12 weeks or what other amendments I might have to make to the program.
Oh, I love this. I'm going to check in with you in
Okay.
like 6 weeks' time and say, how did it go?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
if anybody has made it through all 12 weeks, I'm always curious to see how it went for people.
Yeah, I have found, I mean, it's such a useful resource, I think, the
Yeah.
Artist Way. It really, really is. And I think it's also contextual. I agree. So, sometimes I've also I haven't ever made it to the end of the 12 weeks, but I've kind of picked it up and then put it down, a couple of times. And I think it really depends on where you are in life and your circumstances and situation. And I'm curious, like, why this time round you've got further than the other times. Is there something different for you this time? Is it just,
Huh.
yeah.
I think I know the last time I tried it was with um, a group that I'm involved in, and somebody was kind of moderating, each week giving kind of prompts. And it was just during a very hectic, it was right when I had moved from New York to Rhode Island because I lived in Rhode Island for like the last 9 months of being in the States. And it was literally right when I moved. So there was
Hmm.
just too much stuff going on in my world that I couldn't keep up. I think the first time was relatively early on into kind of this, post corporate life.
Hmm.
And so I hadn't yet gotten into that practice of, I try to write every morning. If you're familiar with London Writing Salon, they have, I join the 8 o'clock London time slot every day, or I try to. And it's just a space for you to write with
Mm.
200 other people on Zoom. And it's just wonderful. And so I hadn't at that time gotten into that one, I think, realization that I could write, that I could, you know, be more creative.
Mm.
Um, and so it just didn't stick as much. I think this time I'm also really enjoying reading so each chapter is for each week. So I read the chapter on a Sunday or a Monday morning, and it just kind of sets the intention for the week. This week is all about possibilities. So I think that was
Mm.
also maybe also part of that kind of creative push that happened.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So it sounds like that has become a helpful practice for you as well.
Yes.
We talked about practice
Yes.
before. Love that. Maghan, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody. And you mentioned the word earlier, essence, this word
Mhm.
essence. And I have, I love this concept in the realm of creativity. I think actually to think about essence as being what lights us up, as being our kind of, I guess, our pure transmission of who we are in our unique light, our radiance. But I'd love to hear from you, like how you define essence, how you think about it, how it shows up for you in the field of creativity.
I think essence is combines a lot of things. And so we started with mentioning Clifton strengths and Sparketypes. And those wonderful assessments give us information about ourself, right? But even those just give like a small sliver of who we are. Because I
Mm.
think who we are is a combination of our persona, our personality, our orientations, our preferences, but also our experiences, like our lived experiences, what we've experienced in the past, what we're experiencing in the present, our hopes and dreams for the future, and also our relationships, right? And all of those things combined, I think, create us and therefore kind of create that essence of us. But it's so like I said earlier, I think the Sparketypes, how, the impulse for the work, that gets to me the closest to, kind of how do you express something that is really it's almost like distilling down millions of data points into kind of
Mm.
the uniqueness of us.
Mm.
Um so I think it's that combination of who we are naturally at our state, who we are because of the experiences that we have or we hope to have, and who we are because of the people that have been in our life. So
That's so
somewhere
beautiful.
somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram.
Yeah, I love that. So what comes to mind is like a facetedness, if I can say that. We're made up of all of these different aspects and different planes of being, and so actually it's sort of really welcoming in these different aspects of ourself. You used the word expansiveness
Yeah.
earlier. Creativity as being, a way to expand or being in itself expansive as well. And so I love the way that you've defined essence in that way because it speaks of like we're bigger than ourselves. We can, and there's so many possibilities. To use that word as well. We can choose as well. And you mentioned being the author of our own story, being at the center of our story, that kind of sense of agency as well. So the bigger we grow, the more we incorporate these different parts of ourselves, the more possibility we have, I guess. So
Yeah.
that's a really beautiful way to distill essence, I think. So thank you for that. Yeah.
No, I love the question.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah. I feel like there's a book in me actually about
Mm,
essence and what it is in the field of creativity. I feel, yeah, it's just something that really fascinates me and I'm just endlessly curious about how other people see it and, you know, how they incorporate it into their lives and how they use it. So who knows? Maybe one day there'll be a book about essence and creativity or something. I should get different people to contribute and do a kind of a co-created all these different definitions of essence and co-created like collaborative book. That would be quite cool. Yeah,
there's endless, right? As many people as there are, there's going to be that many definitions. So I love it because and
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
what I try to promote the most is that like there is literally no one on earth and has never been anyone on earth that is you, that has gone through, has what you have naturally, has the experiences, has the relationships. So stop
Mm,
trying to, play by somebody else's rules and find what works best for you and
yeah.
move forward in that way.
I love that. That's a great stopping place, I think, for this conversation. It's a lovely place to come to a close. Um, Megan, how can we find out more about you? Where can we find you?
Yeah. You can find me on Substack at dotsconnect.substack.com. You can also meghanhaggerty.com also goes there. And hopefully we'll be writing more and publishing more there soon, but you can also find out about how to work with me if anyone's curious about that there too.
Amazing. And I'll put all those links in the notes, the show notes as well. So it has been a delight to talk to you. I knew it would be. I knew it would be a
Same.
very easy, flowy conversation. There was something in the connection. I just knew that we'd have lots in
Yeah.
common, and it's great to have this conversation live with other people joining us. So thank you to everyone who's joined and is listening and taking part in this because we could feel your presence as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just such a lovely conversation. I mean, I can talk about creativity forever, and I suspect you can too.
I
So
absolutely.
I know this won't be the last conversation we have.
Good. I look forward.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing so generously, your thoughts and experience. And yeah, what a joy, what a delight. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you
Yeah.
for hosting these and having these conversations. I think they're really important.
No, thank you. You're very welcome. And thanks to everyone who joined. And we'll see you next time. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.